Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this Friday edition of Shields and Arrows, and thank you all for being a part of this ministry. I really do appreciate it. It means a lot. And it's really encouraging to my church for them to be able to get to see, hey, this little bitty country church in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, has the reach that it does when people send letters to the church, when people come visit the church. It really all means so much. And, you know, I would say if you would like to do something for my ministry right now, and obviously if you don't have the funds to be able to donate to the ministry, I certainly understand. But if you want to write a letter to Blue Baptist Church, really easy to find. Find them on Facebook, look them up on Google. You'll easily find Blue Baptist Church. And just send them a letter. Tell them, you know, you appreciate the ministry. You would love to come see us sometime. So, yeah, maybe that's the thing that you could do for my little church this week. So, really excited to jump into all sorts of matters here concerning current events. I have two major issues or events that we're going to talk about, and then we're going to see, hey, what time do we have to discuss some matters that you have. Let's see, things I have going on today. Jake Merrick's in town. Remember Jake Merrick? We interviewed him. He is running for governor of Oklahoma. I'm going to try to go out to town and see him here in just a little while, and so we're gonna get today's show on the road. First thing we're going to be talking about is good old Pope Leo. You will recall, I made a post on this on the Facebook Right Dividers Defending the Faith page. My prediction early on was that Pope Leo is just going to be another Pope Francis. Just Francis 2.0. Just, you know, a woke Pope. There is Pope Francis right there, and if you are wondering what he is doing, he is blessing a block of ice. That is correct. Let's give you a little bit of context here. Here's the article from the Daily Wire. The Pope hosts cringe climate justice event. That's the name of their article here. The climate justice movement is a left-wing political movement whose goals are the destruction of Western civilization. This is written by Matt Walsh, who I quite enjoy. As a lifelong and devout Catholic, I'm reading the article. I am not a lifelong devout Catholic. Matt Walsh is a lifelong devout Catholic. I don't enjoy criticizing the Pope. I would prefer not to do it. I also don't especially enjoy the backlash that will inevitably come my way from certain other Catholics who believe that I am behaving inappropriately or even committing a sin by issuing these criticisms publicly. Let me just say, first of all, Matt Walsh has been willing on a number of occasions to address the issues with the popes. Francis, now Pope Leo. I commend him on that. He is very faithful to Catholicism. Matt, I guess you are just truly convinced. You are persuaded that Catholicism is correct. Otherwise, I don't know why you stick with it. I am not a Catholic, neither am I the son of a Catholic. So I didn't grow up in that. I would imagine if you grew up Catholic, it would be very difficult to be able to do anything else. I mean, it's just ingrained in you. You're faithful to the very bitter end. There are some Catholics like Michael Knowles, who I admire a great deal, and one of the greatest compliments I've ever received is, somebody's referred to me as the right dividing Michael Knowles. I think he's the best political commentator that we have. But my goodness, the man has a blind spot for Catholicism. He is, like the yellow dog Democrat. Am I using that term? I know there's blue dog Democrat and yellow dog Democrat. Is there a difference? The yellow dog Democrat is your 70-year-old aunt who is the nicest little church lady that you could possibly imagine. She loves the Lord. She is as traditional gets, probably even patriotic. But when it comes November, sweet little aunt always pulls the lever for the Democrat because with a Republican, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and the Democrats for the little man. And she still is under the delusion somehow that, I don't know, FDR is what the Democrat Party is today, even though FDR was quite a radical as well. The Democrats have just always been successful in being crazy radicals, and yet somehow they have managed to persuade some people at times past that they're the party of the everyday man, the working man. Michael Knowles is the equivalent when it comes to Catholicism, all right? He, despite all of his great qualities, his convictions, his beliefs, that he calls him, that's what he calls himself, all right? I'm not making this term up, all right? That mackerel snapping papist, Michael Knowles, always comes back to the defense of Papa Francis or Papa Leo, okay? Every time. It's what he does. So Matt Walsh, I do have a great deal of respect because at least he is willing to say, hey, yeah, the Pope is wrong. Okay, Michael, he always just weasels out of it. And I'll talk about how Michael handled it in a little bit. Credit where credit's due to Matt Walsh. You know me, I'm a right divider. It doesn't make a difference to me. I blessed the Pope last night, okay? I blessed him. I said, bless your heart, because he was giving some pathetic answers. And I told you we would explore it more. So as the right dividing pastor, I have the authority to give blessings to the Pope. And so I bless him. I hope that he is penitent and acknowledges his error. Okay? Can we have a little bit of fun on Friday? Come on now, folks. Lighten up a little bit. So, all that being discussed here, let's just talk about what happened. All right? First, let's see here. Let's talk about the issue of pro-life. Pope Leo was asked a question about apparently in Illinois, some senator, I think he was a Democrat, was given a blessing by a cardinal. I'm paraphrasing a little bit. I'm being completely honest. I'm not that interested. I'm interested in the big picture Catholicism. I'm not interested in like micro level stuff, even though probably it all does matter to some degree. Long story short, they asked Pope Leo, hey, what's your thoughts on the cardinal giving a blessing to the senator who is known to be not pro-life? I'm just giving you the brief summary here. And so here is Matt Walsh explaining the Pope's response. First, the Pope stated that you're not pro-life if you support the death penalty. And this is absolutely what he did. He just completely dodged the question. You may have seen the videos. I don't have the video up, but it's fine. You get the context. He just dodged the question. Well, what does it mean to be pro-life? How can you be pro-life and for the death penalty? What I want you to realize is this is what the left does. And I am putting the Pope in the camp. He is a leftist, all right? I'm just calling it right now, just like Pope Francis, Pope Leo's a leftist. And he is a leftist until he proves himself otherwise. Because every indication, the way he speaks, it's all very clear, all right? So he makes the argument that if you are for capital punishment, if you are for the death penalty, then you are not pro-life, because it is a direct equivalent that an innocent baby in the womb, yeah, I said that, I don't know, Reformed theologians out there, right? I think baby's innocent. They don't have Adam's guilt. I think that's a doctrine we made up. But an innocent baby in the womb, to kill that baby and then to turn around and execute a vicious, terrible murderer is morally equivalent. To murder a baby in the womb and to execute a killer, a criminal, it's all the same. So you can't be pro-life if you're for the death penalty. Really? That's the position you're taking. Once again, it's such a weaselly, slimy answer. What is pro-life? What does that mean? The left hijacks terms. Remember when Trump was in office the first term? And he fortunately got to have a number of Supreme Court appointees because justices were dying or stepping down. And the Democrats started saying, oh my goodness, he's packing the court, he's packing the court. That is not what packing the court means, you silly people. They said, he's packing the court with conservatives. Packing the court is when you say, hey, we're going to raise the number of justices from 9 to, I don't know, 29, right? You're going to drastically jack up the number. That way you can just appoint a whole bunch of leftists to do your bidding, all right? That's what packing the court is. Pope Leo attempting to make this question about pro-life. Well, I don't know. I mean, are you really pro-life if you're for the death penalty? He's just hijacking the term. He knows what it means. This is not, Pope Leo is not some European or living, he didn't live in some monastery in a third world country and had no idea what social political debates were going on. The man is an American. That's kind of the whole big deal about him. He's the first American pope. He knows what pro-life means. All right, he knows exactly what that means, but because of, I don't know, let me be nice, moral cowardice, he won't admit it, all right? Because if he comes out as conservative, then he doesn't get invited to the parties. He's not going to be loved by the media. It's cowardice. That's what it is. Because we'll make fun of Catholicism all we want because they justly deserve it. But he's not reflecting Catholic doctrine. Catholic doctrine, I mean, the Pope, let's just say, has overseen a few executions, all right? Catholicism is not anti-death penalty. God is not anti-death penalty. The Mosaic Law had several instances in which they were to be stoned, they were to be executed. Several's an understatement, honestly. Even think about our dispensation, right? Let's be some good dispensationalists. Paul talking about government. The government doesn't bear the sword in vain. Sounds to me like there's a risk of capital punishment there. Genesis chapter 9, if a man sheds man's blood, by a man will his blood be shed. I paraphrase. God has instituted rules and mechanisms for capital punishment. All right, it's absurd to argue otherwise. And the Catholic Church, their official doctrinal position is not against the death penalty. Now, Pope Leo, his personal opinion may be that the death penalty is not moral, but that is his personal opinion. So, Michael Knowles. He is so smart about so many things. I've complimented him countless times. And I do apologize. I've been out on the tractor this week planning, and so you don't know how bad I need to go right now. But Michael Knowles, great political commentator, so much moral clarity. Really appreciate him. This is where it all falls apart. Michael argues, well, hey, the Pope is answering on a technicality. I mean, what does it mean to be pro-life? We've got to be specific about terms and what we mean, right? Words have meaning. Yes, Michael, words have meaning. Also, stop blindly following the papacy. Stop being a good little Catholic and falling in line. I really do think that right now Catholicism is seeing an upsurge. Especially the traditional churches that do the Latin Mass and things like that. People are drawn to tradition. They like the history. They like all of that. They are infatuated. The masses that are going right? Catholic Mass. See what I did there? They are infatuated with a Catholicism that doesn't actually exist. Because your Holy Father, I just shudder at saying such a silly thing. There's only one Holy Father, right? God the Father. He is not reflecting what you think Catholicism is, and He is the head of your church. This is the problem with Catholicism, right? You are tied to the hip of whatever the Pope says. You really are. And the Catholics say, well, that's not true. I mean, the Pope can be wrong. Okay, then why is it that you refuse to acknowledge a Pope is really, truly corrupt or doctrinally unsound while he's in the position. See, they have no problem with talking about popes after they're gone. I mean, you'll hear Michael say a number of things about some popes that have passed. So they're not afraid to call out bad popes when they're dead and gone. But in the moment, when the Pope is in position, oh, we must venerate the Pope. It seems to me like an inconsistency of doctrine. It seems to me to be a big black eye to Catholicism. And I really do think a bunch of people are going to finally realize this, that, hey, Catholicism's kind of bankrupt, and it's not really, they don't really stand their ground. They just bend and fold to whatever the papacy's doing. And then they'll pretend like they have this rich, rigid tradition. Doesn't seem to me like your tradition's all that rich or all that rigid. It seems like every single passing year, Catholicism gets a little bit less conservative. It gets a little bit more progressive. It is this constant trend that we see moving forward. And once again, we've talked about this. I want to do an expose on this. I want to do an investigation. One of the claims of Catholicism is, hey, we're the one true church. We trace our roots back 2,000 years. Do you really? Is Catholicism today really what Catholicism was in the, I don't know, let's just say even the 18th century, or going back even further? I have my doubts. I think that people keep standing under a banner, but the banner has no foundation. It's always shifting. You can tell that by the leaders. And another interesting thing, I see Kitty's comment here, Dr. Campbell. It's kind of like baptism to a degree. Preachers will say baptism's not required, but if you say, well, I guess I'm not going to be baptized, that's the first act of obedience. How can you be saved if you don't follow through in believer's baptism? The first act, the first sign that you have believed the gospel. It's kind of telling what they're really teaching, what people are getting out of all this. You can say by grace through faith all you want, but then if the masses are still thinking we've got to be baptized, clearly something you're communicating, clearly some position that you're upholding, the way that you operate things, you're giving people that notion. Kitty says, I was taught in Catholic school that the Pope is infallible. This is such a good point, because Catholics will say, Michael will say, whoever, the Pope he's not always... He's fallible. He doesn't always get it right. But then the general sentiment of everybody is hey, yeah, the Pope's speaking. He's not wrong. You got to listen to him. You got to do what he says because he's the Pope. What is the message that people are getting from you? I think that's really telling. So he dodges the question on pro-life, and moving on, he also added here, if you don't open the borders to hordes of illegal aliens from the third world. Now, obviously, Matt's using his own words, but that's a point he said. How can you be pro-life but support the mistreatment of illegals or the inhumane treatment? Are we standing for the inhumane treatment of illegals? What do you mean by inhumane? Pope, you're the one that's acting like words matter. Talking about pro-life. What does that mean technically? Technically pro-life. What do you mean by inhumane? How are you defining it? Are you saying inhumane as in, I don't know, depriving them of food? Are you saying physical abuse? Are you saying that's humane? We would all agree with that. They shouldn't be physically abused. They shouldn't be deprived of sustenance. Or are you saying it's inhumane to take the illegal alien and deport him? Are you clutching your priestly robe because of that? You mean enforcing the law? Pope, what if I decided I'm just going to go live in the walls of the Vatican? Could I do that? Do y'all think that would work? If you are willing to raise the funds and send me to the Vatican, right? It's in Rome. Send me to the Vatican and let's see if I can live within the walls. I'm going to jump the walls and I'm going to run in and I'm going to claim asylum. And then I will tell the Pope that it is inhumane if he tries to remove me. My suspicion is if I try to jump the walls, will I get shot? Do you think I might get shot if I try to jump the walls of the Vatican? My suspicion is I might get shot. So it's just, it's all pandering. That's all this is. And the thing that's frustrating is Michael Knowles, if the words that were coming out of Pope Leo's mouth were the words of, I don't know, Kamala Harris or Gavin Newsom, somebody like that, or even a squishy Republican like Liz Cheney, oh, shudder to think, he would do a masterful job addressing the silly hypocrisy. And he would point out the redefining of terms and all the issues with it. But because it's Papa Leo, man, he just cannot get himself to acknowledge the simple truth because it would undermine his doctrine. It would undermine his theology. I am so thankful as a right divider that we are not tied to a man. All right? We are tied to the Word of God. That's our authority. I don't care what the Pope says. He's just a guy that wears a funny hat. I don't care what the president of the SBC has to say. He's probably as left-wing as the Pope is. And then, yeah, he goes on and blesses a chunk of ice because climate change, what have you. So, Pope Leo, sorry, hate to admit it, hate to say I told you so. I was right. He's just Francis 2.0. Luke says they always have the out that the Pope is only infallible when he speaks ex cathedra and proclaims himself to be infallible. Yeah, they can. Yeah, they have their weaselly little ways to get out of it. And I like a lot of the Catholics. They're conservative. A number of them are. I like Michael Knowles. I wish he'd become a right divider. I like Matt Walsh a lot too. I mean, these are good people. But wow. Don't come to me with your Protestantism snarky remarks. Not that I'm a Protestant. I'm so far beyond that. I protest the Protestants. You got your problems. Catholicism has its issues. And I think there's going to be a vacuum. There's going to be a void when people realize that, hey, Catholicism is just as bankrupt as standard evangelicalism. And that's when I'm going to take over the world. All right. Now, moving on, let's quickly talk about the government. I don't know if you knew this. The government is shut down right now. Is this a big deal? People always panic. You know, they say, well, the government shutdown is going to sway the midterms. It'll sway the election. I don't know. I mean, right now, you know, kind of one of the big pitches was that this is going to hurt the Democrats because it's the Democrats' fault. I don't know if the people really care. I don't know if society really is paying that much attention, if they're going to see it as, hey, this is the Democrats, or if they just see this as the government blob. The Democrats will run their propaganda. The Republicans will run their propaganda. I do think the Republicans are less, what's the word I'm looking for here? Manipulative, I would say, in this particular case. I do think for the most part Republicans are not as manipulative as the Democrats. Hence, I side with them. When you have those general elections, you got to do what you got to do. For those relying on federal government checks, and if you're not considered necessary, essential, this is going to hurt you. I don't know if some of you are missing out right now on some payments that were supposed to come your way. It will affect people. There's also the idea of, hey, some federal jobs, you're going to be potentially at risk of not being employed anymore. Maybe they're going to cut jobs here. Trump's talked about some of that. Maybe it's all just a bargaining ploy. I don't know. I would just say for anybody who's saying, oh, this definitely means the Republicans are going to get a leg up, or if this definitely means that the Democrats are going to get a leg up, I don't think anybody really knows. I don't see it as that simple. I've never found a time in my life, my short lifespan, in which I can tell that the government shutting down made a big difference. Everybody's panicking about it, and then, Paul says, I'll be honest, I didn't even know it was shut down. Yeah, right. And then for most people, it doesn't affect them. But if you are, one of those federal workers, now, of course, Congress continues to get paid. Of course they do. Now, why did the government shut down? I used DuckDuckGo's AI to just give a decent overall analysis. I think it's pretty good from what I largely understand. So over here on DuckDuckGo, use their AI to give the summary. Reasons for the government shutdown. The U.S. government shut down due to a failure to pass a funding bill. Both Republican and Democratic lawmakers could not agree on budget proposals. The disagreement centered around health care subsidies and cuts to Medicaid. That's largely the truth. October 1st is the beginning of the fiscal year. They needed to pass their resolutions, and yet they couldn't get enough votes. You need 60 votes to get it passed. Republicans don't have 60 votes in the Senate, so therefore the Democrats were able to get government shutdown. Because if you don't have a budget passed, well, then you got to shut down. That's just how it works. Democrats, their big holdout, on top of a number of reasons, they want more spending for Medicaid. One of the parts of the budget being passed by the Republicans is a cut to Medicaid, especially concerning illegals. Democrats heavily, want to provide medical care to the illegals. They think that illegals help them. To a degree they do, I'm sure. The Senate rejected a Democrat-backed bill, so basically the Democrats said, hey, we'll vote for it if you will support the increased spending on health care subsidies for illegals. That's really what this is about. Republicans said no. The Republicans proposed a stopgap funding measure, basically a temporary budget to get them by, to get things open again. The Democrats turned that down. Now, once again, some essential services are continuing on. Here's the truth. The budget that the Republicans are proposing is still a massive budget. I mean, it's still increasing the deficit by a good deal. The current proposed budget would increase the deficit by about $3 trillion over the next 3 years. That's the numbers I'm seeing there. I think that's $3 trillion over the next. That sounds like a lot, but I think that's right. Double check those numbers. The point is, it's still deficit spending. We're not balancing the budget at all by proposing this budget. It's very similar to Biden's, and truth be told, it doesn't even have some of the DOGE cuts that we would like to see become permanent. So the Democrats do not like the cuts to health care. Here are my thoughts. I wish that we lived in a world where we were not in deficit spending. That world does not exist. I don't see how we ever get there again without major change. I mean, major change. I don't know exactly what kind of major change we're talking about, but as long as things stay the status quo, neither Republicans or Democrats will ever propose a balanced budget again, okay? Like, that's just gone. So a lot of people point out Trump's spending, right? Trump spent a lot. This is true. Trump's spending was mostly on the military to a large degree. Now, granted, all of the benefits, subsidies, health care, you name it, none of those went away under Trump's first term. I'm talking about his first term. But a lot of it was due to the military, but also Trump cut taxes. Well, when you cut taxes, you decrease revenue. When you increase spending on the military, for example, you're going to spend more money, all right? What it is, I'm not saying that it's justified, I'm just telling you that's what happened. Biden obviously didn't spend as much on the military. He didn't do anything to restrict benefits, subsidies, things like that. Also, one of the things that did hurt Trump at the very end, which bumped his numbers up more, was COVID. We need to make a lot of noise about balancing the budget. Here is my point, though. We can be budget hawks, and we can scream, and we can yell about that, and I get it. But you will scream and yell right into the hands of a Gavin Newsom presidency, or whoever is the Democrat nominee. The Democrats are just going to spend money. They just are. The Republicans are just going to spend money. They just are. Now, we can work on it. I don't see the Democrats ever cutting back. Maybe if we yell enough at the Republicans, they'll cut back. But I am telling you right now, I would much rather have a Republican exercising the authority of the federal government than a Democrat, even though the federal government's still way too big. So in conclusion on all this, it's frustrating that the budget is as big as it is. We want to see the deficit go. We want to see the deficit spending go away, right? I mean, you're racking up debt. You're racking up debt. It doesn't matter if you decrease the deficit. You're still in a deficit. But for all the people who are so hard on Trump, he has built up the military. He did cut spending. He did cut taxes. Well, I mean, okay, if you don't want spending on the military, that's okay. I think if we're going to spend anything, the federal government should be spending it on the military. Then again, maybe we should go back to just a militia system, as it once was. The 14th Amendment really kind of ruined a lot of things. All that being said, that's my take. I don't know. Anybody who's telling you that it's going to lean one way, it's going to result in some massive change in the midterms, I don't think so. I think the midterms are going to be about what we'd expect them to. My suspicion is the Republicans will probably keep the Senate, I hope. Democrats probably get the House. And then, you're kind of gridlocked from there, right? Not much is going to happen, which is a perk of the government, that it's hard to get things done. Of course, again, Trump will do a lot of executive orders, and which is problematic as well. So I hope that now you understand my position on government shutdown and government expenditure and all the like. All right. So let's go ahead and see here. I see we've got Faith and Liberty, who had a couple comments here. Regarding Hebrews chapter 10, please see the email that I sent you yesterday for details to my question today. Hebrews 10 may have a wrinkle I hadn't seen before and want your opinion. Faith and Liberty continues, says, some of the Jews were going back to the old way to making sacrifices in the temple. And this after receiving Christ's perfect sacrifice, and by doing so are trampling on the blood of Christ. They were drawing back to the first covenant, even though the second covenant is superior and eternal, and for this God promises chastening even to destruction. They were, after all, spitting on the blood of Christ. Never saw this before, but seems probable to me. Your thoughts? Thank you. So, let's go to your email, Faith and Liberty, and let's see if we can also find some evidence here that David is his name, David. But let's see if there's anything to back that up. Okay, so the email, David says, Hebrews 10:26, sinning willfully. Every sin we commit is willfully. I would slightly disagree with that. I think sometimes in the scriptures, especially the law, there was the sin as a result of ignorance. They didn't realize they had sinned against God, and if they then became aware of it, then they responded accordingly. And really, those were the only sins that you could offer a sacrifice for, as if you sinned unwillingly, accidentally, unknowingly. So you go on to say we all do every day. I think that's probably true. We all at some point we sin knowing that we're sinning. And so we all could be in this boat, all of us, and the word is willfully, not repeatedly. Thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah, it is willfully. It's not, we can't change the word to be something else to help it fit our doctrine. So what is he talking about here? The whole chapter is about Christ's superior sacrifice. The whole passage is connected and is a logical argument by Paul. Once again, David, like me, I think Paul wrote Hebrews. Does it make a massive difference for our doctrine? I don't think so. But regardless, whoever the author is, the master of spiritual logic, he shows us this, verses 1 through 18, Christ's perfect superior sacrifice, verses 19 through 25, what we should do in light of his perfect sacrifice, verses 26 through 39, what we should not do, draw back to what? Some of the Jews were going back to the old way to making sacrifices in the temple. Let's see if we can get that. For if we sin willfully, after that we have received the knowledge of the truth, there remaineth no more sacrifice for sins, but a fearful looking for of judgment and fiery indignation, which shall devour the adversaries. He that despised Moses' law died without mercy under 2 or 3 witnesses. How much more sorer punishment, suppose ye, shall he be thought worthy who hath trodden under foot the Son of God, and hath counted the blood of the covenant wherewith he was sanctified an unholy thing, and hath done despite unto the Spirit of grace. I'm looking for the phrase you use there, draw back. Not the just. Now the just shall live by faith, but if any man draw back, my soul shall have no pleasure in him. Draw back. So your proposal is drawing back means continuing to offer sacrifices. I have a very, very interesting proposition for you. I don't know that God necessarily commanded, bear with me, I don't know that he necessarily commanded Israel to stop sacrifices after the death of Christ. One of the very interesting things, and I know that you're a dispensationalist, David, is when we read the Old Testament. I'm going to try to see if I can find it. Ezekiel, is it chapter? Let me see if I can find this quickly here. When we read Ezekiel, chapter 40 is when we see the description of the millennial temple. I believe this is a millennial temple. You get a lot of measurements, you get the gates, you get the steps, the inner court, you have the gate toward the south, and so on. You have all these different details, Ezekiel measuring, which I believe is that millennial temple. It's a future temple. The second temple was not built to the measurements of this temple. So this can't be, Ezekiel 40 can't be the second temple. It's not big enough. It's not the right measurements. And the chamber whose prospect is toward the north is for the priests, the keepers of the charge of the altar. The altar. There's an altar in the millennial temple. These are the sons of Zadok among the sons of Levi, who come near to the Lord to minister unto Him. So here's a reference to the altar in the millennial temple. So he measured the court 100 cubits long and 100 cubits broad, foursquare, in the altar that was before the house. And afterward he brought me to the temple and measured the post, 6 cubits broad on one side. He goes on, he continues to read the descriptions of the temple. As you continue to read, let me continue to work my way through here. I don't have all these exactly memorized where all this is in Ezekiel. I kind of just have to meander through. But what I'm trying to get at is when you see the temple described, there's an altar in the temple. And I'm going to argue that you'll even see sacrifices being offered in the millennial temple. Then he said unto me, the north chambers and the south chambers, which are before the separate place, they be holy chambers, where the priests that approach unto the Lord shall eat the most holy things. There shall they lay the most holy things, and the meat offering, and the sin offering, and the trespass offering, for the place is holy. Now, either we're going to allegorize that, we're going to take that figuratively. That cannot be the millennial temple because clearly, well, I guess we could say that those cannot be actual sacrifices. Those cannot be offerings because Christ has come. We've always heard it said Christ is the last sacrifice. He's the sacrifice for the new covenant. That is true. Are there sacrifices still to come? When you read Ezekiel 42, and David, I'd like to get your opinion here as you read, I think that every indication is this is, in fact, the millennial temple. And behold, the glory of the God of Israel came from the way of the east, and His voice was like a noise of many waters, and the earth shined with His glory. I mean, this is the second coming right here. This is Christ returning. The glory of the Lord came into the house by the way of the gate, whose prospect is toward the east. Remember, Christ planted His feet on the Mount of Olives. Mount of Olives faces the east gate of the temple. There's sacrifices to be offered in that temple. Meat offering, sin offering. How? Well, that's what the text says. I just have to let it say what it says. That's the thing about being a right divider. I just let it say what it says. So to go back over here to Hebrews to say their major offense was offering sacrifices, I just don't know that that would be the best answer, because sacrifices are not inherently against God. Now, another question is, if we're going to try to make Hebrews chapter 10 a passage that is in regard to us, if I started trying to sacrifice a calf, do I lose my standing with God? If we're going to make Hebrews 10 about us, do you understand the issue there, what I'm trying to communicate? Because if the warning is there to the Jews offering sacrifices, and that has caused them to face the fiery indignation that will devour the adversaries, could I do that as well if I start trying to offer goats, offer lambs, offer doves? Once again, we lose our security of salvation, I think, if we apply that. And then you have the following verse. Now the just shall live by faith, back over here on the left in Hebrews. But if any man draw back, my soul shall have no pleasure in him. But we are not of them who draw back unto perdition. perdition is just sin, I would say. Is the law sin? God forbid. Even Paul says it. For Israel, and once again, if I'm taking this as an Israel book, if they were offering sacrifices still, there's an interesting discussion there that's not really going against God's will. The sacrifice of Christ was to accomplish the new covenant, or was to make possible the new covenant. But there's still some mechanism for sacrifices even in the millennium. What's that about? Well, let me continue to study in time, and I'll let you know my investigation. I really think the key here, it all comes back to the mystery. Because I think, David, as long as we disagree on the mystery, we're never going to get eye to eye on Hebrews. I would recommend reading Ephesians 3. If ye have heard of the dispensation of the grace of God, which is given me to youward, how that by revelation he made known unto me the mystery, as I wrote afore in few words, whereby when you read, you may understand my knowledge in the mystery of Christ, which in other ages was not made known unto the sons of men, as it is now revealed unto his holy apostles and prophets by the Spirit, that the Gentiles should be fellow heirs and of the same body, and partakers of his promise in Christ by the gospel. What is that promise? I don't think it's the promise of the new covenant. I think it's this mystery. This is the promise that's being offered. Unto me, who am less than the least of all saints, is this grace given, that I should preach among the Gentiles the unsearchable riches of Christ. They're unsearchable. If I can go back to Ezekiel and find the prophecy of the new covenant, then it's searchable. I can seek it out. This is a mystery that's unsearchable. It was hidden. Verse 9. And to make all men see what is the fellowship of the mystery, which from the beginning of the world hath been hid in God. From the beginning of the world it was hid in God, who created all things by Jesus Christ. And so I think the key is, Paul's ministry is unique when it comes to the Gentiles. That's going to be my solution there. I just don't know that we have the liberty to say, well, if the Jews continue to offer sacrifices, they are committing that trespass, treading on the blood of Christ. I just don't know that that's going to hold up. That's my thoughts there. Let's see here. Luke says, I believe that the willful sin is taking the mark of the beast. That is the same sin that John talks about in 1 John 5:16. Possibly. But I don't know. I feel like it's almost broader than that, than just to make it a single sin. But maybe. Try to convince me, Luke. You're a smart guy. Robert says that would definitely be one. I do believe that all the books after Paul's 13 are for the guidance of those who are left behind. Yeah, I think that all those will be very relevant. Yep, those will be future Jews enduring to receive the kingdom. All right, everyone, I'm going to go ahead and let you go today. I got things to go do and get done, but I appreciate each and every one of you for being a part of the ministry, partaking of the show. Hopefully you found it to be a good time of theological discussion, cultural discussion, you name it. We shy away from nothing here. We got to defend the faith, the family, and the fellowship, and everything that affects the faith, the family, and the fellowship. And so pray that we'd go forward with the knowledge of the Word of God, making good, sound doctrinal decisions. And with that, thank you all so much for being a part of this today. We will see all of you Sunday for our Sunday school and sermon. We really appreciate it.